This is Leisha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment podcast. And I am absolutely thrilled to bits that we are being rejoined today by a guest that was probably one of our initial pioneering guests back in 2020 when we launched the podcast. And I've known this lady for a number of years, and she's someone that I hold very dear because she's certainly transforming the recruitment industry from internally and externally as well. This is Louise Archer, and she's the founder of Retrained Search, and joining us today with a very cool picture behind you. Welcome back today, Lou. How are you?
Oh, thanks for having me, Leisha. I'm really good, thank you. I'm delighted to be here. I know what a privilege it is to have a spot on this show, so thank you for inviting me back.
I mean, we met many years ago in a hotel in Cheshire, and we've always stayed firm friends, you know, recommending each other, endorsing each other. And to see your business, which is why I wanted to invite you back on today, how you have flourished since you were last on the show. So just give us a little bit of a timeline. You were on probably about summer 2020. You know, we were at the back end of lockdown one. What's happened to your business since then?
Oh, wow. A lot. I think when we spoke, we were just launching the video course that I'd spent lockdown putting together, teaching contingent recruiters how to win and deliver their work on a retained basis. We'd just started putting the first pilot groups through, and we had our 10 founding members. And now, fast forward 2 years, we've had over 800 participants through our program, and they are now graduate members. We started in Manchester with teams locally to where I was in the Northwest, and you are too. We now have members in Hong Kong, Tokyo, Singapore, in Harare in Africa, in Sydney, in Perth, in Christchurch, in you name it, every corner of the world, and we're delighted. The course has evolved, not beyond recognition. The core principles and core techniques are still the same, but because we work on a process of continuous improvement, everything that gets done by our members that works gets fed back into the program. So it's the actual course itself has just evolved and grown and just been getting better and better, as has the community of people sharing what they do and how they do things and supporting each other, as has our team to support them. Yeah. So there's now 7 of us at Retrained Search. Yeah.
Incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, really, yeah, it's amazing, really.
Just watching it from, you know, obviously I've seen your journey and, you know, watched you move from, you know, working in a search firm effectively to, you know, then running your own business and working as a consultant and then launching this as you have done so phenomenally. And, you know, I just think and utilized the opportunity when we had to all work virtually to actually transform something that could have been quite an exhaustive, you know, you'd have to do face-to-face training. I mean, you've just absolutely, for me, embellished what this is, what the world is all about now. You know, utilizing your experience. So it's phenomenal, and you deserve it all. You really do. Oh. And I see the communities that you've created, because you've got community groups, haven't you? On, is it Facebook and LinkedIn?
Facebook, our community, core communities in Facebook, and then we also have a mastery community, and they're the ones that are getting really experienced with it and starting to do more C-suite work and more complex consultancy services like pipelining and mapping and intelligence studies. That can be a bit too much for someone just entering into the world of retained. So we kind of separate the nursery slopes from the advanced group.
It's good analogy to have. And I, you know, watching that and seeing the genuine collaboration and support that people have. I mean, you have created this wonderful community for your customers. So it's not just somebody buying into an online course and that's it, plug in, plug out again, take it off with you. It's actually, you're creating a different universe, really, aren't you? Which is great.
Yeah, I never expected that to happen. I wanted to provide it as a way for people to help each other, but I never expected that it would take off in the way that it has. And it never ceases to amaze me how helpful we can be as recruiters to each other, and how willing people are to not worry about whether it's a competitor or what market they are or what location they're in, and just to answer a question that someone's put in there with using their first-hand experience and just give. I mean, we were always encouraging, you know, help other people as well as seeking help yourself. and just doing that constantly has bred this community that is just enormously helpful of each other.
Well, at the core of your community is kindness, and for someone who, I'm going to start really championing this as a key trait that we look for when we're hiring recruiters in, because it's never really talked about. You know,
No.
what are we doing? We are actually taking people on a career journey. Where however you're recruiting, whether you're recruiting transactionally, drivers, you know, teachers, nursery nurses, or whether you're actually placing C-suite, you are taking another human being on a journey. And actually, if you're at the heart you're kind, then you will always be successful. And I think that's really what comes across. But I think that cascades down from you, Lou. So that's because you're just a really genuine, warm person.
That's very nice of you to say. That was very nice of you to say. And I was actually criticised recently on LinkedIn for being warm and fuzzy. Too warm and fuzzy, apparently.
Okay.
There's such a thing, it would seem.
Well, I don't really know what fuzzy means.
It's just not nice, isn't it? It's trying to tell me not to be kind. Anyway, there you go. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But I agree. I absolutely agree. My dad has bred a lot of kind of founding kind of or core principles into me, and that is one of them. Always do the right thing. Whether that means that makes you money or whether it means it doesn't make you money, it doesn't matter. Do the right thing, and eventually the good things will happen. Look after people, be kind to people, and do to others as you would want done to yourself, and don't worry about the success. It will come. And so I'm a huge believer in that.
It's true, and that for me, observing your community genuinely, I'm not blowing smoke at you here though, that's the sense you get.
Yeah.
And I totally agree. And I think that recruitment as an industry is at a very critical point in terms of our narrative, where we are moving away from this perception that we are just there to make money, and it is down to people like you that are steering that mindset away, where it is about true partnership. And you know, ultimately, and I know this will lead very nicely into what you're going to talk about, we are truly, you know, consultative in how we operate, and a true consultant isn't there to just, you know, make a quick fast buck.
No.
You know, this is about doing the right thing. That's what integrity really means. So, you know,
yeah, agreed. I mean, I think there will always be people that don't do that. There will always be people that are just opportunistic and will just, you know, try and make a fast buck and aren't bothered about and there'll always be people on the receiving end of it thinking, yeah, that's fine, I'll take that. But no. I'd rather leave that to people that are happy working in that way, and I want to be the former. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, you'll magnetize the people towards you, and that, I think that in any community, and that's what people say. You know, if we think about the world we all live in on LinkedIn, generally, we're probably going to be sharing this on LinkedIn. You are going to magnetize people towards you that you want to be in your community and in your audience. And if you're somebody that, if you can go out and you're just about the money, good luck to you. Absolutely fine. But for me, that's the secondary benefit of what I do, and that's very much.
I agree.
So back in the room, in terms of the sort of the retrained search, in terms of your journey, and you know, you've really embraced the virtual world, and you've got this incredible global audience, which is great because that plugs into our global audience. So, you know, let's set the scene. You know, as we record this in 2022, I don't think there's any market that isn't candidate short and therefore candidate led. So how do you then position that in terms of selling that solution to your client? So just, you know, the reality is, you know, most companies would probably, you know, think, well, where are you going to find that talent from? There's no talent out there. Just position the reality of why and how we can get into that mindset that it's still the right solution.
So there's two different scenarios. I don't believe that there's always a case or it's always the right thing to be recommending that we work on a retained basis, and we teach when not to. A big part of the sell or the education as to why we want to work in this way is being able to diagnose whether it's the right thing to recommend in the first place.
Good.
And sometimes it isn't. The case is that there's several cases in which I've found that it isn't the right thing to do. Where a client is just open to people, always we'll just have good people whenever. The most prevalent industries or industries where I see this happening most often is in legal and in recruitment.
Yeah.
In that, if there's a fee earner around that is looking for a move, then we'll see them and potentially make a space for them. It doesn't make sense for them to restrict, from a client's perspective, restrict their supply of those people. It makes sense for them to sign terms with as many of those people as possible, really, thus precluding them also from poaching from their staff. And often the legal firms, private practice particularly, are very clued up in doing that, and they do exactly that. And that allows them to take a good candidate when they come along, and us as recruiters, of course, to feed them through as and when they come along. And that can be fine if that's all they want, just people as and when they come along. Where that starts to get challenging from a client's perspective is where the people aren't coming along and they have an actual need, a specific need. And that might be because somebody's left and they've got a hole, or it could be because they're opening a new location and they need somebody in that specific location, or they need a specific skill set to meet a specific market or client's needs. And they can't just wait and hope that these people just come along. That's the instance where just hoping that somebody comes along doesn't fulfill their need. And in that situation, in those markets, in legal and recruitment, I've seen that retained search can solve that problem. And in answer to your question, in terms of how do you find these people, if it's a very candidate short market, I'm not saying that you would be able to. You can't make people. We're not magicians. We can't make people be there that aren't there, and we can't make people be interested that aren't interested. But what we can do is we can take a brief from our client in terms of what they're looking for. We can use our market knowledge and our experience to make sure that brief is as feasible as it possibly can be and realistic as it possibly can be, in line with what does exist in the market. We can go with that brief and identify and systematically identify all of those candidates that look to potentially meet that brief, and we can approach them all using lots of different methods that might appeal to those people and trying different techniques to engage with them. We can take a really compelling proposition to them as to what our client is offering and what it could do for them. And we can bring as many of those candidates to the table as is humanly possible to do. And we can make sure that our client is making a selection from all of the people that are available to them in the market at this time, even if that is just 2 or 1. But they will know that that is the only options that are available to them, and therefore will be able to make a decision on the best decision that's available to them in the market at this time. And we can't do that on a no-win, no-fee basis.
No, it's not feasible.
It's just not commercially viable to do it.
No, without
so in answer to your question overall, in a candidate-led market, how can it be the right thing to offer? It isn't always.
No.
But if a client has a need and they have to find somebody, it's the only way of being certain that they are getting the best that they possibly can. Even if they have to make several sacrifices along the way, the decisions that they do make, they'll be confident that they're doing it because there are no other options available to them. They'll never be wondering, oh, maybe there's something else out there, or maybe there's something better out there, or maybe if I just wait a bit more, then somebody might come along. They'll actually be able to make that decision and move forward.
It's making that decision. It's not trying to find the person. It's giving them the market intel and understanding where that talent actually sits, which is applicable even in my market in Rec to Rec. Because
and not just where it sits, but what do they want from their careers?
Absolutely.
How do we position and that all of that information, compensation and benefits, perception of their brand in the market, what this talent cohort want from their careers, and it isn't always money. Sometimes it is, but it isn't always. There's often lots of other things that they want. Feeds into the strategy of the talent strategy of the business. So, in simple terms, they'll be able to position it better. Absolutely. And that can mean that they are able to make a hire that they wouldn't wouldn't have been able to make before. And we just can't do all that with no financial commitment. It's just too risky.
It's too risky, and nobody in the right mind would actually even think about doing that. And I'm so pleased that that's why we've started the sort of substantial part of this podcast, because there are so many recruiters that will be listening, and we get a lot of people who, I mean, it's very hard to gauge exactly who our listener is. Hello to you all, but feedback wise, and we love it when we get messages. It's just the best feeling. It tends to be from leaders, which is wonderful. And there'll be plenty of leaders that have, grown a business and haven't considered the retained solution, but also a lot of people entering the recruitment industry, they're in their first, second year in recruitment, they've come into it post-COVID, and they probably see that and recognize, because their mindset is about value, and it's about value to them as the recruiter, and it's about being rewarded for their time spent. But what can I do to position myself differently to you as a client? And actually that level of intelligence and that level of understanding what your value proposition is as an employer, of course, you're going to pay my time. You wouldn't go to any other business or any other sector and not get paid for that level of intelligence. So I think it's so well positioned, and I think it resonates across every single industry, even legal and Rex Rec. And I'm so glad you positioned it like that. I think that was really well answered. I'm going to be really contrary now, though, because anyone that knows me on a Rex Rec basis also knows that I go to market with candidates. I'm candidate driven. And I think that if we wind the clock back to the start of time of recruitment, which was probably the 1940s or 50s, if we're really being quite truthful, but, let's say the 80s even, what if it was the candidate that had paid for the search, not the client? So on that basis, given certainly at senior end of the market, it's so, so challenging. Is there ever a case for us charging candidates for going to market with what they're looking for? And reversing it?
So I've dabbled with that thinking myself. And I've worked with many senior, sometimes not even necessarily senior, but high potential, special candidates, and taken them to market. And it's a really rewarding thing to do. It's a really rewarding thing to do. And at one point I thought, if I could just do this all the time, and actually I didn't have to rely on the clients paying me the fees. I did speak to several people about it, actually. One of the people, I've had several conversations about this quite a few years ago now. And my answer to your question, having forayed a little bit down that route, I'm afraid is no. I don't think there is a case for it.
No.
I'd be loved to be proved wrong, and hopefully somebody one day will, maybe you. But for me, I don't see it. No, for several reasons. Firstly, because simply the budget that a client has, and versus an individual, the cost of covering the amount of time and expertise that's involved with somebody that is skilled enough to be able to do it effectively at the level that we would need to make it commercially viable for us, the fees need to be fairly substantial, and individuals tend not to have any kind of budget for that in their career. Secondly, it doesn't matter how much a candidate wants to go and work for a firm, or how much we want that candidate to go and work for a firm, or how much we think they ought to go and work for that firm. If the need isn't there from the client, they won't bring that candidate in. The decision ultimately lies with the client, and the buyer is always the client of the placement, which is what the product basically that we're selling. So we can't really charge the candidate for something that we're not in control of. It's the client that is in control of that. So it's them that ultimately has to buy from us.
Yeah, no, do you know,
sadly.
I've never asked that question before to anybody, I don't think, other than within a safe Rex Rec community, because obviously I speak to my competitors, and there have been many times over the years where we've used it and we've always reached the same conclusion. I was just interested to know from your side, and we always ultimately say that although candidate is king, it is ultimately the hiring client that is the customer, because they're paying us, and it's as simple as that. And I think, and maybe that I was a little bit contrived in asking this question, where we are really responsible, you and me, Luke, because we've been doing this a long time, that a lot of recruiters listening are on the crest of a wave. They've not worked through a challenging economic time, and they're probably, as we're listening to this, it's probably official that we're in a recession, and it could prove challenging to your clients hiring, where they might start to knuckle down a bit. They might start to push you back on fees. I mean, at the moment, we're all on the crest of a wave, charging pretty much what we can, because there's so many, there's so few talent out there. But actually, I sometimes get feedback from, friends who are in senior posts, across accountancy, legal, not just recruiters, but also obviously recruitment company owners, where they feel that their role in the process is diminished because the candidate is so rare. And actually, we have to treat our clients with ultimate respect, and they have a budget to hire. We have to prove our value with all the things that we've talked about, all the things that you've just talked about, and actually just show real respect for their role in this. I often get told, sometimes recruiters don't call clients back because there's so many jobs not calling them back, and it's like, actually, no, that's your customer. So I'm really pleased that, and I wasn't setting you up for that question. I just think it was really good to get your insight because of the way you position this in terms of selling the retained solution.
I like it. I'd like to be proved wrong, but I don't think so.
No. If anybody wants to come and pay me to find them a job, you're very welcome to, but I don't think we're actually allowed.
Likewise.
So there you go. We'll try it. So in terms of you could never have foreseen this. I've known you for many, many years, and I don't think at any point you ever sort of
no way.
Let's get our crystal balls out. What have you got planned for the future in terms of offering solutions to your customers, and where do you see the market going over the coming months and years?
In order to stay ahead of the game, in order to be at the forefront of what works, what doesn't work, what our clients, who are our customers, as we've quite rightly, I think, come to the conclusion, what they need and what they want, and how to make sure that we're positioning ourselves accordingly and delivering results against that. Our program has to be an ever evolving, ever improving, living thing. And we do that to a certain extent already, because we're constantly feeding in and adding and adjusting and bringing a new material in, as we have been doing over the last couple of years. But we're going to be taking that one step further and actually turning it into something that is officially living and breathing. Wow. And that's our next steps. I know that's a bit being a little bit vague there, because how it works and what it all looks like is kind of still under construction, and we're still figuring it all out. But that's basically the direction of travel for us. Yeah, which is exciting.
Well, we will watch this space, and if by the time we launch this episode into the real world, maybe you'll be in a position to reveal.
We'll be further on. Yeah, we will be further on. So I mean, that ties in with how do I see the market going. You and I have been in this game, as you've said, for a couple of times for quite a long time. It's been 20 years, over 20 years for me, and my mum was in it for 20 years before that. So I've grown up with it, and we both know that it's just a roller coaster. It's never not going to be a roller coaster. It's always going to be a roller coaster, as in, it is for everybody in industry. And we always have to adapt and change the way that we work, and what we did yesterday isn't necessarily what we're doing tomorrow, and the way that we did it yesterday isn't necessarily going to be the way that we do it tomorrow. What in my experience of having worked on a retained basis for many years now, I haven't seen a scenario in which retained doesn't have its place, and that in many situations it can be the only way of getting what you want, whether it's a noisy flooded candidate market or whether it's a really tight, competitive candidate short market, there are different ways of doing things, and learning that there are and diversifying the way in which you do things is always going to be beneficial for you as a recruiter.
No, it's good, and I'm so glad that we've kind of positioned it against your provenance in the industry, because you're absolutely right. We're going, they say 7-year cycles. I've no idea anymore because COVID kind of blew that theory up. We are in a, you know, there's no one day the same, and I think you have to be truly innovative and receptive and open-minded, and listen to what your customers need. But I think, you know, on behalf of the whole industry, I want to thank you personally, because you are part of the pioneering group that I think elevates how our industry is perceived. You know, we are partners and we are entitled to charge for our time for the job that we do. It is as simple as that. There is no other profession that would go to the length and breadth of what we do for free, which very often. Okay, so I want to thank you for that, because you are, without a shadow of a doubt, you know, synonymous with that. And, you know, you have, like I say, 800 people have gone through and graduated. And I know that next time we speak, it'll be even more. So you're just a wonderful lady, and you're doing it all from, you know, running a family as well. So I know that's not easy, Lou.
I mean, as you know, I've been a single parent I was a single parent for a long time, and I'm running a business at the same time, and it's all so rewarding, but it is all challenging, and you need a pretty strong guiding light to keep you on your mission and on your purpose. And from a work perspective, mine very much is helping people to realise and to actually realise in their careers that they're able to work at the level that they really want to, if they choose to do that, and give everyone the confidence that it isn't mysterious, it isn't difficult, it isn't impossible, it isn't for other people, it's for us as people that care about what we're doing.
Social mobility to self-retained is not just for the, you know, the exclusive Black Book Brigade. It isn't. It really isn't. And I know that the many people that I've referred to you come out of it and think, of course I can sell that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's changing mindset. So thank you. And we really appreciate you giving up your time, because I know you're really busy. And well done to your dogs for not barking. Very well behaved.
And your children for being quiet.
My bit for being quiet. Thank you for joining us again on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast, Lee.
Thank you, Leisha.